Ancient China, the dynasty that shaped world history. Ancient China is one of the oldest and most influential civilizations in human history, with a legacy that continues to affect the world today. Its history spans thousands of years, marked by the rise and fall of dynasties, the development of advanced technologies, philosophical thought, and complex social structures. From the fertile banks of the Yellow River to the expansive lands of the Middle Kingdom, ancient China laid the foundations for governance, culture, and innovation that shaped not only East Asia but also the wider world. Origins of civilization. The earliest settlements in China emerged along the Yellow River, often called the cradle of Chinese civilization. Around 2000 BCE, small agrarian communities began to develop sophisticated farming techniques, including irrigation and flood control, which allowed populations to grow and cities to form. These early societies laid the groundwork for the development of dynasties, centralized governments, and cultural traditions that would endure for millennia. Archaeological discoveries, such as the remains of the early Tu culture and early bronze vessels, reveal that ancient China had already achieved remarkable technological and artistic accomplishments. Bronze tools and weapons demonstrated advanced metallurgy, while pottery and ceramics reflected a high level of craftsmanship and symbolic expression. Religion and ritual played a central role in these early societies, often connecting rulers with divine authority, a theme that persisted throughout Chinese history. The first dynasties. China's first recognized dynasties, such as the Xia dynasty, circa 2070 to 1600 BCE, and the Shang dynasty, circa 1600 to 1046 BCE, established the foundations of organized government, writing, and culture. The Shang dynasty, in particular, is notable for its oracle bone script, the earliest known form of Chinese writing. This writing system allowed the recording of events, religious rituals, and governance, creating a continuity of culture that extended through successive dynasties. The ruling class of the Shang dynasty was supported by a system of nobles and warriors, while peasants provided the labor necessary for agriculture and construction. Bronze weapons and chariots allowed the Shang rulers to maintain control over their territories, and elaborate tombs and ceremonial sites reflected the connection between political power and spiritual authority. Philosophical and cultural flourishing. Ancient China was not only defined by political structures but also by philosophical and cultural innovation. Confucianism, Taoism, and later legalism emerged as major schools of thought, shaping Chinese society for centuries. Confucianism emphasized morality, family loyalty, and the importance of education, influencing government officials and social conduct. Taoism advocated harmony with nature and the cultivation of inner peace, while legalism promoted strict laws and centralized authority as a means to maintain order. These philosophies were more than abstract ideas. They influenced daily life, education, governance, and even international relations. The belief in a moral ruler, guided by wisdom and virtue, became a central principle in Chinese dynastic rule. Education and scholarship were highly valued, with examinations eventually becoming a system for selecting civil servants. Technological innovations. Throughout its history, ancient China produced remarkable technological advances that shaped world history. Early Chinese inventors developed bronze casting, ironworking, and advanced agricultural tools, which increased productivity and supported population growth. Later innovations included paper, printing, the compass, and gunpowder, which revolutionized communication, navigation, and warfare not only in China but also across the globe. The construction of massive infrastructure projects, such as canals, roads, and city walls, demonstrated the capability of Chinese governments to organize labor and resources on a massive scale. These projects facilitated trade, military defense, and cultural exchange, connecting regions within China and beyond. Legacy and global influence. Ancient China's influence extended far beyond its borders. Its innovations in governance, philosophy, science, and art contributed to the development of civilizations throughout Asia. The idea of a centralized state ruled by a moral sovereign, the importance of written records, and the development of sophisticated technology all had lasting effects on the world. Trade along the Silk Road spread Chinese goods, ideas, and culture across continents, linking China to Europe, the Middle East, and India. Geography and rivers in ancient China. Ancient China's geography and river systems played a central role in shaping its civilization, economy, and society. The earliest Chinese settlements developed along two major rivers, the Yellow River, Huanghe, in the north and the Yangtze River, Changjiang, in the south. These rivers provided water, transportation, fertile soil, and a foundation for some of the world's earliest complex societies. The Yellow River, Huanghe. The Yellow River is often called the cradle of Chinese civilization because the earliest dynasties, such as the Xia and Shang, developed along its banks. The river carried rich loess soil from northern China, creating highly fertile land ideal for farming. Crops like millet, wheat, and later rice thrived in this region. However, the Yellow River was also known as China's Sorrow because it frequently flooded. These floods could destroy homes and crops, but they also deposited nutrient-rich silt, replenishing the soil and allowing future crops to grow. This dual nature of the river forced communities to develop flood control systems, levees, and irrigation techniques, demonstrating early Chinese ingenuity in engineering and communal organization. The Yangtze River, Changjiang. The Yangtze River, located in southern China, is the longest river in Asia. Its warm climate and abundant rainfall made it ideal for rice cultivation, which could support larger populations than millet alone. The Yangtze Basin also encouraged the development of trade, transportation, and cultural exchange because the river allowed communities to connect across vast distances. Rivers and population growth. The fertile plains of both the Yellow and Yangtze rivers supported the growth of large farming communities. Reliable agriculture allowed populations to expand, which in turn supported the rise of towns, cities, and eventually dynastic governments. The rivers also acted as natural highways, enabling the movement of goods, people, and ideas. The role of floods. While floods could be destructive, they were also a source of prosperity. Communities learned to predict seasonal changes, build irrigation channels, and manage water resources effectively. These innovations not only increased food production but also fostered cooperation and centralized governance, laying the foundation for strong dynastic rule. In summary, ancient China's rivers were more than just bodies of water, they were lifelines of civilization. The Yellow and Yangtze rivers provided fertile soil, food, transportation, and opportunities for engineering, helping communities thrive and eventually giving rise to some of the most influential dynasties in world history. Dynasties of ancient China. The early dynasties of China, the Xia, Shang, and Zhou, were the foundation of Chinese civilization. They established the political, social, and cultural structures that would influence China for thousands of years. These dynasties not only organized society and government but also introduced innovations in technology, writing, warfare, and philosophy, shaping the identity of one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. The Xia dynasty, circa 2070 to 1600 BCE. The Xia dynasty is traditionally considered the first dynasty in Chinese history, though archaeological evidence is still debated. According to ancient records, the Xia established the idea of hereditary rule, where kingship passed from father to son. This principle of dynastic succession became a cornerstone of Chinese governance for centuries. The Xia rulers organized flood control and irrigation projects, particularly along the Yellow River, to protect communities and increase agricultural production. These engineering efforts required coordination and centralized authority, laying the groundwork for later dynasties. Agriculture was the backbone of Xia society, with millet as a staple crop, and settlements grew along fertile riverbanks. Although few written records survive, the Xia dynasty is credited with developing early social hierarchies, organizing labor for public works, and establishing a cultural identity that linked rulers with divine authority, often called the mandate of heaven, in later dynasties. The Shang dynasty, circa 1600 to 1046 BCE. The Shang dynasty is the first Chinese dynasty confirmed by archaeological evidence. It was a period of significant technological, cultural, and political development. The Shang ruled from walled cities along the Yellow River and controlled surrounding regions through a network of nobles and warriors. Technological and cultural achievements. Bronze casting. The Shang excelled in bronze metallurgy, producing weapons, tools, and ceremonial vessels. Bronze weapons strengthened armies, while bronze ritual objects were used in religious ceremonies, linking the material world with spiritual authority. Chariots. The Shang introduced chariots in warfare, which gave them mobility and advantage over enemies. Chariots also became symbols of status and power for nobles. Early writing. The Shang developed the oracle bone script, the earliest known form of Chinese writing. Diviners inscribed questions on turtle shells or bones and interpreted the cracks caused by heating them to communicate with ancestors or predict the future. This early writing allowed the Shang to record events, maintain law and order, and transmit cultural values across generations. Society and religion. The Shang society was hierarchical. Kings and nobles held power, warriors enforced authority, artisans produced goods, and peasants worked the land. Religion was central to daily life, with ancestor worship and sacrifices playing a key role in maintaining divine favor and social order. The Shang believed that the king acted as a mediator between the gods and the people. The Zhou dynasty, circa 1046 to 256 BCE. The Zhou dynasty overthrew the Shang and introduced new ideas about governance and political structure. The Zhou ruled for over 8 centuries, making it the longest-lasting dynasty in Chinese history. Political organization. Kings and nobles. The Zhou maintained a hierarchical system where the king held ultimate authority but delegated power to nobles who governed local regions. Feudal system. The Zhou implemented an early form of feudalism, granting land to nobles in exchange for loyalty, military support, and tribute. This system allowed the Zhou to govern vast territories effectively. Local rulers, lords and officials managed day-to-day administration, collected taxes, and organized defense, creating a network that combined central and regional control. Cultural and philosophical development. The Zhou era introduced the mandate of heaven, the belief that rulers governed with divine approval. This concept justified the transfer of power from the Shang to the Zhou and became a guiding principle for all future dynasties. The mandate of heaven emphasized that rulers had a moral obligation to govern justly. Failure could justify rebellion and the rise of a new dynasty. The Zhou also fostered advancements in agriculture, metallurgy, and trade. Iron tools became more common, improving farming efficiency. Population growth and city development flourished, and cultural practices, including rituals, music, and early literature, spread widely. Legacy of the early dynasties. Together, the Xia, Shang, and Zhou laid the foundations of Chinese culture, governance, and technology. They established principles of hereditary rule, hierarchical society, ritual and religion, early writing, and centralized administration. First writing system of ancient China. The first writing system of ancient China was developed during the Shang dynasty, circa 1600 to 1046 BCE, and represents one of the most important achievements in Chinese history. It allowed rulers to record events, communicate across vast territories, manage trade, and maintain control over society. This early system of writing laid the foundation for the complex Chinese characters used today and helped unify China culturally and politically. Origins of writing. The earliest Chinese writing appeared in the form of oracle bones, which were usually turtle shells or cattle bones. The Shang kings and priests used these bones for divination, predicting the future, making decisions, and seeking guidance from ancestors. Questions about harvests, weather, battles, and royal affairs were carved onto the bones in early pictographic symbols, which were then heated until cracks appeared. The patterns of the cracks were interpreted by diviners, and the inscriptions recorded both the question and the outcome. This practice represents the earliest known form of Chinese writing. Each symbol often represented a word or concept, and while it began as a tool for religious and political purposes, it gradually became a method for broader communication. Functions of early writing. The first writing system served several key purposes. 1. Government administration. Kings and officials used writing to record taxes, labor contributions, and military campaigns. Written records helped rulers manage the growing population and complex bureaucracy of the Shang dynasty. 2. Religious and ritual practices. Writing on oracle bones was closely tied to ancestor worship and divination. By recording questions and answers, the Shang connected the spiritual world with the earthly realm, reinforcing the ruler's divine authority. 3. Trade and economy. Symbols were used to track goods, property, and resources, which facilitated trade and ensured that supplies and tributes were properly documented. This early accounting system helped maintain economic order and stability. 4. Cultural unity. Having a shared system of writing allowed different regions under Shang control to communicate more effectively. It created a cultural cohesion that extended beyond individual cities and villages, fostering a sense of shared identity and governance. Characteristics of the writing system. Pictographic elements. Many characters were originally pictures representing objects or actions, such as animals, people, or tools. Evolving complexity. Over time, the writing system became more abstract and symbolic, allowing it to express more complex ideas. Durable medium. Carving characters into bones or shells ensured that important messages and records would last for generations, giving historians a glimpse into early Chinese society today. Legacy of Shang writing. The Shang writing system was the beginning of over 3,000 years of continuous Chinese writing. Later dynasties, including the Zhou, Qin, and Han, refined the characters into the standardized scripts we know today. Writing became not only a tool for government but also for literature, philosophy, law, and historical records, shaping Chinese culture for millennia. By creating a unified method of communication, the Shang dynasty established a system that helped rulers govern efficiently, supported trade, reinforced cultural identity, and connected the spiritual and political worlds. This innovation was a key factor in the rise of ancient China as a powerful and enduring civilization, demonstrating how writing can transform society. Qin dynasty, the first unified China. The Qin dynasty, 221–206 BCE, was one of the most important periods in Chinese history. It marked the first time that China was fully unified under a central government, creating a foundation for the future of the Chinese state. The Qin dynasty introduced sweeping political, cultural, and military reforms that strengthened control, standardized systems across the empire, and left a legacy that continues to influence China today. Rise of the Qin. Before the Qin dynasty, China was divided into many warring states during the Warring States period, 475–21 BCE. These states constantly fought each other for territory, resources, and power. The Qin state, located in the northwestern region of China, gradually gained strength through military conquest, efficient governance, and strategic alliances. The leader of the Qin, Qin Shi Huang, became the first emperor of a united China. After defeating the last of the rival states in 221 BCE, he declared himself the first emperor, Shi Huangdi, establishing centralized imperial authority for the first time in Chinese history. Centralization and standardization. Qin Shi Huang understood that unifying such a vast territory required more than military conquest. He introduced strict laws, standardized systems, and centralized administration to create stability. 1. Standardized writing. The Qin simplified and unified the writing system across the empire. This made communication, record-keeping, and government administration more efficient. Officials in distant regions could now read the same documents, ensuring consistency in laws and instructions. 2. Standardized currency. To promote trade and economic integration, the Qin introduced a uniform system of coins. This replaced the diverse currencies of the warring states and encouraged commerce throughout the empire. 3. Standardized weights and measures. The Qin standardized weights, measures, and even axle lengths for carts. This allowed goods to be transported efficiently and fairly across the empire. 4. Legal reforms. The Qin adopted legalism, a philosophy emphasizing strict laws and harsh punishments, to enforce order and obedience. Officials were held accountable, and crimes were met with severe penalties, which helped consolidate imperial control. Military and defense. The Qin dynasty was also known for its military innovations and massive construction projects. The Great Wall. To protect the empire from northern nomadic invasions, Qin Shi Huang initiated the construction of the First Great Wall of China. Sections of existing walls from earlier states were connected and reinforced. Although primitive compared to the later Ming Great Wall, it was a monumental effort that required thousands of laborers. Roads and canals. The Qin built an extensive network of roads and canals, allowing troops to move quickly and facilitating trade and communication throughout the empire. Terracotta Army. To guard him in the afterlife, Qin Shi Huang commissioned the Terracotta Army, thousands of life-sized statues representing soldiers, horses, and chariots. This reflects the dynasty's military focus and the emperor's desire for eternal protection. Impact on Chinese society. The Qin dynasty, though short-lived, had long-lasting effects on China. Unified governance. The centralization of power under a single emperor set the model for all later dynasties. Cultural cohesion, standardized writing, currency, and laws helped unify a diverse population spread across vast territories. Infrastructure. Roads, canals, and defensive walls strengthened both the economy and security of China. Legal and administrative systems. The Qin's emphasis on centralized authority influenced the development of bureaucracy and imperial law for centuries. However, the dynasty also faced criticism for its harsh rule. Heavy taxation, forced labor on massive projects, and strict legal punishments led to widespread discontent. After Qin Shi Huang's death in 210 BCE, rebellion spread rapidly, and the dynasty collapsed by 206 BCE, giving way to the Han dynasty. Legacy of the Qin dynasty. Despite its short duration, the Qin dynasty shaped the future of China. It demonstrated the possibility of unifying a vast and diverse territory under one central government. It established administrative and legal systems that would influence later dynasties, including the Han, Tang, and Ming. Its innovations in writing, currency, and infrastructure created a foundation for cultural and economic cohesion. The construction of the Great Wall symbolized China's determination to protect its borders and preserve its civilization. Han Dynasty, China's Golden Age. The Han Dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, is widely considered one of the greatest periods in Chinese history, often called China's Golden Age. Following the collapse of the Qin dynasty, the Han rulers consolidated power, expanded the empire, and established a period of stability, cultural flourishing, and technological advancement. The achievements of the Han dynasty shaped China politically, economically, and culturally for centuries and left a lasting global legacy. The rise of the Han dynasty. After the fall of the Qin dynasty in 206 BCE, China faced political chaos and social unrest. Liu Bang, a former peasant and rebel leader, emerged as a powerful figure and defeated rival warlords to become the first emperor of the Han dynasty, taking the name Emperor Gaoju of Han. Liu Bang recognized the importance of balancing centralized authority with local governance, learning from the harsh policies of the Qin. The Han dynasty initially continued some Qin systems, such as centralized rule and bureaucracy, but softened overly strict laws, reducing burdens on peasants and nobles. This approach helped stabilize the empire and gain popular support. Political structure and governance. The Han dynasty developed a highly organized government that became a model for later dynasties. Centralized bureaucracy. The emperor controlled the empire through a network of officials, ministers, and regional governors. Confucian principles. Confucianism became the official ideology, emphasizing morality, education, and the importance of virtuous governance. Scholars were trained in Confucian classics and became civil servants through examinations, establishing the early foundations of the civil service system. Legal and administrative reforms. Laws were simplified compared to the Qin, but the emperor retained ultimate authority. Local officials were held accountable, creating an effective and organized administrative system. Economic prosperity and trade. The Han Dynasty saw significant economic growth. Agriculture. Advances in irrigation, plowing techniques, and tools improved crop yields. Large-scale rice cultivation in the south and wheat, millet in the north supported a growing population. Silk production. Silk became one of China's most valuable commodities, both domestically and for export. The demand for silk helped drive trade across Asia and eventually to Europe. The Silk Road. Under the Han, the famous Silk Road opened, linking China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe. This network of trade routes facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, religions, and culture, making China a key player in global commerce. Cultural and scientific achievements. The Han Dynasty was a period of extraordinary cultural, scientific, and technological development. Literature and philosophy. Confucianism flourished, and historical works such as Records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian were written, preserving Chinese history and culture. Medicine. Advances in herbal medicine, acupuncture, and diagnostic techniques improved healthcare. Texts documented treatments and medical knowledge that influenced later generations. Technology. Inventions included the seismograph, water-powered mills, improved iron tools, and the early use of paper, which facilitated record-keeping and education. Arts and architecture. Bronze, jade, and pottery crafts reached new heights. Palaces, tombs, and public buildings reflected both aesthetic sophistication and engineering skill. Expansion and military power. The Han Dynasty expanded Chinese territory significantly. Northern campaigns. Han forces defeated nomadic Xiongnu tribes, securing northern borders and trade routes. Southern expansion. Territories in southern China and parts of modern Vietnam were integrated into the empire. Influence beyond borders. Chinese culture, administration, and technology spread to neighboring regions through military, trade, and diplomacy. The expansion of territory, combined with the opening of trade routes, allowed the Han to interact with distant civilizations, bringing China into a broader global context. Legacy of the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty's impact on China and the world was immense. Golden Age of stability. For over 4 centuries, the Han maintained political stability, economic prosperity, and social order. Cultural identity. Confucianism, literature, philosophy, and arts flourished, creating a lasting Chinese cultural identity. Scientific and technological innovation. Han achievements in medicine, engineering, and invention influenced both China and neighboring regions. Global trade. The Silk Road connected China to the wider world, making it a hub of international exchange. Early Chinese belief systems and their influence. Ancient China's civilization was shaped not only by dynasties, rivers, and technology but also by philosophy and religion. The earliest belief systems, including Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, played a critical role in guiding personal behavior, social order, governance, and cultural expression. These ideas influenced every aspect of life, from politics and education to art, literature, and daily customs, creating a foundation for Chinese values that endures to this day. Confucianism. Chinese society. Together, Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism formed a comprehensive framework for life in ancient China. Confucianism provided structure and social order, guiding government and family life. Taoism offered a spiritual balance and harmony with nature, influencing lifestyle, medicine, and art. Buddhism encouraged moral reflection, compassion, and spiritual growth, adding depth to religious and philosophical thought. These belief systems also shaped government policies, education, literature, and art. Confucianism became the basis for the civil service exams, Taoism inspired poetry and painting, and Buddhism introduced new forms of sculpture and temple architecture. Collectively, they created a rich cultural heritage that defined Chinese civilization for thousands of years and continues to influence values, traditions, and ethics in China today. Great Wall and architecture in ancient China. Ancient China's architecture and engineering projects were not only expressions of cultural achievement but also critical tools for defense, governance, and economic development. Among these, the Great Wall of China stands as the most iconic symbol of Chinese ingenuity and determination. Alongside the Great Wall, the construction of temples, palaces, canals, and roads reflected the sophistication of ancient Chinese society and the ability of its dynasties to organize massive projects that unified and strengthened the empire. The Great Wall, defense and national security. The Great Wall of China was built over several dynasties, with major construction during the Qin dynasty, 221–206 BCE, under Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Its primary purpose was to defend China from northern nomadic invasions, especially from the Xiongnu and other tribal groups. Construction and labor. Massive workforce, tens of thousands of soldiers, peasants, and convicts were mobilized to build the wall. Laborers faced extreme conditions, including harsh climates, steep mountains, and long distances. Many workers lost their lives during construction, highlighting the human cost of this monumental project. Engineering skill. Builders used local materials such as stone, tamped earth, and wood to construct walls, watchtowers, and fortresses. The design included signal towers for communication, ramps for moving troops, and fortified gates for defense. Long-term planning. The wall was not a single continuous structure but a network of walls, trenches, and natural barriers that were connected over time. Its construction required careful surveying, planning, and coordination across vast distances. The Great Wall served both military and symbolic purposes. Militarily, it provided early warning against invasions and acted as a formidable barrier. Symbolically, it represented the strength, unity, and determination of the Chinese state, demonstrating the emperor's authority and the ability to mobilize the population for collective goals. Palaces and temples, centers of power and worship. Chinese architecture extended beyond defensive structures. Palaces and temples were central to political, religious, and social life. Palaces. The imperial palace was a seat of power, designed to project authority and grandeur. Elaborate courtyards, halls, and ceremonial spaces reflected the emperor's status and the hierarchical nature of society. The design emphasized symmetry, feng shui principles, and aesthetic harmony. Temples. Religious architecture, including temples for ancestor worship, Confucian rituals, Taoist practices, and later Buddhist ceremonies, played a key role in connecting people with spiritual and moral order. Temples often contained altars, statues, and sacred inscriptions, serving as centers of cultural education and ritual activity. These structures were not just decorative, they reinforced social hierarchy, cultural values, and religious beliefs, helping unify the empire under shared traditions and moral codes. Canals and roads, connecting the empire. Infrastructure projects were equally important for unifying and strengthening China. Canals. The construction of canals facilitated the movement of water, goods, and troops. They enabled efficient irrigation for agriculture and connected regions for trade and communication. Roads. Extensive road networks allowed armies, officials, and merchants to travel efficiently across vast territories. Standardized road widths, paving, and mile markers ensured that goods and messages could move quickly, enhancing political control and economic integration. The combination of walls, canals, and roads demonstrates how architecture and engineering were used as tools of governance. These projects integrated regions, promoted trade, and enabled central authorities to maintain control over distant territories. Cultural and technological significance. Ancient Chinese architecture was a reflection of technological skill, artistic vision, and cultural values. Engineering innovations, tamped earth walls, stone foundations, and watchtower systems showed advanced knowledge of construction and military strategy. Aesthetic harmony. Buildings and urban layouts were carefully designed according to principles of feng shui, symmetry, and balance, creating harmony between humans and the natural environment. Cultural identity. Monumental projects like the Great Wall and imperial palaces symbolized national unity, strength, and continuity, becoming central to Chinese identity and pride. Legacy of architecture and the Great Wall. The architectural achievements of ancient China had lasting impacts on the empire and the world. The Great Wall remains a symbol of China's resilience and engineering prowess. The Silk Road, China's gateway to the world. The Silk Road was one of the most important achievements of ancient China, serving as a vast network of trade routes that connected China to Asia, Africa, and Europe. More than just a series of paths, the Silk Road became a bridge of commerce, culture, and ideas, influencing societies across continents and laying the foundations for globalization thousands of years before modern transportation and communication. Origins and purpose. The Silk Road emerged during the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, when China's growing economy and surplus of goods created opportunities for long-distance trade. The network of roads, mountain passes, and river routes linked China with Central Asia, the Middle East, India, and eventually Europe. Economic motivation. China was rich in silk, porcelain, tea, and paper, while other regions had goods like spices, precious metals, horses, and gems. Traders exchanged these items, creating wealth and strengthening political alliances. Strategic and diplomatic goals. The Han emperors used the Silk Road to expand influence, gather intelligence, and secure alliances with nomadic tribes and distant kingdoms, ensuring the safety of trade routes and China's northern borders. Key goods and exchanges. The Silk Road was named for the most famous Chinese export, silk, but it facilitated the exchange of a wide variety of goods and ideas. 1. Silk and textiles. Chinese silk became a luxury item highly prized in Rome, Persia, and India. Silk symbolized wealth and status, creating demand across continents. 2. Spices and tea. Traders brought exotic spices from India and Southeast Asia, as well as Chinese tea, which became a staple in many cultures. 3. Technology. Innovations such as paper, printing techniques, gunpowder, and compass navigation spread from China to other regions, influencing science and warfare. 4. Religious and philosophical ideas. Buddhism traveled from India to China, merging with Chinese traditions and influencing art, literature, and rituals. Ideas, philosophies, and cultural practices spread along these routes, fostering cross-cultural understanding. Routes and geography. The Silk Road was not a single road but a network of overland and maritime routes. Northern routes passed through deserts like the Taklamakan, connecting China to Central Asia and Europe. Caravan cities and oases provided rest, supplies, and protection for traders. Southern routes followed river valleys and mountain passes, linking China with India, Southeast Asia, and maritime trade networks. Maritime Silk Road. Sea routes connected Chinese ports with Southeast Asia, India, the Persian Gulf, and East Africa, complementing overland trade and allowing the exchange of bulk goods. Cultural and social impact. The Silk Road was not only a trade network but also a conduit for cultural exchange, language and writing. Merchants and diplomats exchanged knowledge of foreign languages, scripts, and accounting systems. Art and architecture. Buddhist statues, murals, and temples appeared along trade routes, blending Chinese, Indian, and Central Asian styles. Cuisine and agriculture. New foods, plants, and agricultural techniques spread across regions, enriching local diets and farming methods. Ideas and knowledge. Medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy traveled alongside goods, creating intellectual exchange and cross-cultural innovation. Economic and political significance. The Silk Road strengthened the Chinese economy and state power. Wealth and prosperity, taxes, tariffs, and trade profits enriched dynasties like the Han and Tang, funding infrastructure, defense, and governance. Diplomacy. Trade routes allowed China to establish alliances with distant states, promoting peace and political stability. Urban development. Cities like Chang'an, modern Xi'an, flourished as centers of trade, culture, and political authority, becoming cosmopolitan hubs of the ancient world. Legacy of the Silk Road. The Silk Road had a lasting impact on global history. It became an early model of global trade, linking continents economically and culturally. It facilitated the spread of religions, including Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, shaping civilizations along its routes. It enabled the transfer of technology, scientific knowledge, and art, contributing to innovation in distant lands. It created a sense of interconnectedness, demonstrating how trade can unite diverse peoples and cultures. Even today, the Silk Road is celebrated for its historical significance, cultural influence, and role in shaping globalization. It reflects the vision and ambition of ancient China, showing how commerce, diplomacy, and ideas can travel thousands of miles to transform the world.